From the Rafters of Rupp is brought to you by Bud's Gun Shop, Don Franklin's Auto Mall, Double Dogs, Friends of Coal, Hunt Brothers Pizza, Kentucky Farm Bureau.
The multiple banners and jerseys decorating the overhead beams in Rupp Arena honor 8 national championships, 17 Final Fours, and many of the celebrated All-Americans who've helped define the overall success of the University of Kentucky basketball program. Hello everyone, I'm Kyle Macy. Throughout the Rafters of Rupp series, we continue our visits with multiple members of that select group of Kentucky legends whose jerseys hang from the Rafters of Rupp. In today's episode, we feature number 32, Richard Dwight Farmer. Richie, as he's affectionately known, led his Clay County High School basketball team to the 1987 Kentucky State Championship. As a prep star, Richie amassed statewide legendary status before ever suiting up for the Kentucky Blue and White. Once at UK, his devoted fan base grew deeper as Richie earned his spot on an unforgettables team who proved their loyalty to the University of Kentucky by sticking with the basketball program through some of its most difficult times. I recently spent some time with Richie and asked him if he remembered at what point in his life he developed an interest for the game of basketball and who was the most influential person in helping him establish his trademark skill set.
I remember as a first grader, my first grade teacher asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And, a lot of kids would say, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be an astronaut. And I wrote down that I wanted to be a UK Wildcat. I think one of my big influences in life was my father. He was a baseball player and a basketball player, and so he taught us to play those same sports. Dad was always a stickler for the fundamentals and teaching us the proper way to do things. So, he was, I can remember him making Russ and I stay out, and, we'd have to learn how to shoot a left-handed layup and how to shoot a right-handed layup, and you had to jump off the right leg. And so we'd have to make 10 in a row from this side and then 10 in a row from that side. And, before we was able to go in and eat supper, and Mom would be hollering, I've got supper ready, you guys come in. No, wait, they have to make 10 in a row from each side, that kind of thing.
Richie progressed in both skill level and body development at an early age, and by the time he reached middle school, he was ready to compete at the high school level. And as an 8th grader, he made his first of 5 consecutive trips to Kentucky's illustrious Sweet 16 state basketball tournament.
I started on the freshman and JV team as a 7th grader and led them both in scoring. Now, I dressed as an 8th grader on the varsity team. And I played, I'd get in the game if we were, way ahead, that kind of thing, and I used to practice with them. But I actually got to the state tournament as an 8th grader and got in a game. We were playing Owensboro my 8th grade year, and we were ahead by 20-some points, so I got in for 1 minute and 8 seconds, I think it was, and I scored 2 points as an 8th grader.
Legendary Hall of Fame coach Bobby Keith compiled a spectacular overall record of 767 wins with only 125 losses while at Clay County. Coach Keith led the Tiger program during Richie's high school career. Richie recalled fond memories of Coach Keith, then shared his thoughts about Clay County's historic season of 1987.
Bobby Keith was, I think, a larger-than-life kind of personality there in Clay County. And, he was one of those guys that would push you and develop you, but he was quick to tell you that you weren't where you were supposed to be, kind of thing. And he told me one time, he said, I'll let you know. I'll let you know when you're good. And Bobby Keith, in my opinion, is one of the greatest high school basketball coaches the state's ever seen. My junior year is the year that we were able to finally get back and get to the finals and, played a great game against Allen Houston and Ballard and won in overtime. And I can remember, the feeling of what that was like, to win a state championship for, our little county and our town. It was amazing. And it was a dream come true for me. That was one of those things that you laid in the bed and dreamed about at night, because I used to listen to them on the radio, and, And I actually, came down and watched a couple state tournaments, and I thought, wow, just to get a chance to play on Rupp Arena's floor and, to be able to be a part of that would just be, the most awesome thing, ever. And so when we did that, going home, there was people on the interstate before we got off the interstate at London, and people was lined up on the parkway and all the way back to Manchester, and the fire trucks they had, it was unbelievable, man. I mean, it was like, wow, I didn't know there was this many people there. It was pretty special, not only for our little town, but for, all of Eastern Kentucky for us to have won the state tournament.
We'll return with more of my conversation with Richie Farmer after these words from our sponsors.
Hunt Brothers Pizza has been proudly serving communities across America for over 25 years. Download the Hunt Brothers Pizza app to find one of our 7,500 locations inside a convenience store near you.
Are you a sporting shooter, hunter, or looking for the best concealed carry option? Bud's Gun Shop and Range is Kentucky's largest selection of firearms, ammunition, and firearm accessories, located on Industry Road in Lexington.
Richie Farmer was named Kentucky's Mr. Basketball in 1988. His lifelong dream of playing for the Wildcats was in doubt, though, as the scholarship offer from UK was slow in coming. With other offers on the table and time running out, UK coach Eddie Sutton received a slight nudge, or as some recall, a firm push, from the Kentucky fan base to help extend the only scholarship offer Richie Farmer ever wanted.
I was recruited by most of the SEC schools, and the one in particular that really went after me hard was LSU and Dale Brown. He came right to my living room, and they offered me a scholarship on the spot, but he said, I'm recruiting what I feel like's the two best guards in the nation. He said, one of them I've already got, a guard out of Gulfport, Mississippi named Chris Jackson. He said, you're the other one. But I had gotten letters from all around the country. I'd gotten letters and calls from Bobby Knight even, to play at IU. But, where I was still holding out trying to see if Kentucky would come calling. And it wasn't until, after I scored 51 in the state finals that they really, I think, started getting a lot of pressure to say, hey, you got to take this kid. Eddie Sutton was the head coach. And his son was playing here, and, there was a lot of other really good players here at the time. But I think I was really popular in the state, and, everybody kind of watched me grow up, watching me play in the state tournament every year. And I think that there was a lot of outside pressure, on them to recruit me. So they came down, and actually the signing for me was they made a big to-do about it there at the high school, and it was a public thing, and the gym was full, and that's where I actually signed my letter of intent.
Richie's transition to college life was not an easy one. The adjustments for an 18-year-old facing a tough college course load, learning about city life, all while competing for playing time at the highest level of Division I basketball was challenging to say the least.
Growing up in southeastern Kentucky and in Clay County where I was from, when I came to Lexington, I might as well have been in New York City. To me, I was in a metropolis. And, I know I'd been in the lodge a couple nights, and I thought, I walked into the lobby and I said, has everything here burnt down? And that's like, what are you talking about? And I said, the fire trucks and sirens that you hear all the time here. I said, what is going on? People think that playing basketball at the collegiate level is all glitz and glamour, and it's the Saturday afternoon in front of 24,000. But it's so much more than that, it's, the 5 a.m.s getting up and going to the track and running, and, the workouts and the practices and, the study halls and all the things that you have to do. You basically have no time other than, you focus on basketball and books, and, that's pretty much your life.
As Richie's freshman season wore on, the Wildcat program faced nationwide scrutiny over the infamous open package addressed to freshman Chris Mills. The Cats plotted their way to a 13-19 record, the first losing season at Kentucky in over 60 years. Coach Eddie Sutton was let go, and Kentucky was placed on NCAA probation. Richie talked about players leaving and uneasiness around the program and the role C.M. Newton played in leading the direction of the program during this time.
I think there was a cloud, over what we were doing, and there was a lot of rumors circulating, and as you know that they do around the program of what might happen, or people just talking about all kinds of scenarios. So I think it had a lot to do with what went on. As a kid growing up, and you never heard of any of those things like that before, and I'd never been part of a losing team. Having a losing season, and especially, to think of having one at Kentucky was just, mind-blowing, mind-boggling. CM actually had, called meetings and, would bring us in, and, he gave us a rah-rah speech, one time that I remember in particular. He said, you guys, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna find you the best coach available, and we're gonna get a great coach to come in here. Or he said, hell, I'll coach you damn guys myself. So a lot of the people that was named in anything or had anything to do with us being on probation, they were other places playing, and, we were here suffering the consequences for other people's actions, and none of us had anything to do with anything that was wrong. So I think it was just fortunate, and I think it was, fate, I guess, that we had a bunch of guys that, were Kentucky kids that just wanted to see Kentucky back where we deserve to be.
We'll be right back with more from Richie Farmer after these words from our sponsors.
Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance. Big on commitment.
We never set out to be the largest auto dealer in Kentucky. He just set out to provide people reliable vehicles and great customer service. And for the last 50 years, that's what we've done.
In the summer of 1989, C.M. Newton introduced Rick Pitino as the new head basketball coach at the University of Kentucky. I was interested to find out what Richie's first impression was of the sharp-dressing 37-year-old coach from the East Coast.
He said he couldn't understand me and I couldn't understand him, so we just, they had this thing back and forth in the media. And he had the reputation of rebuilding programs and, starting over and bringing them back. And, we had just never been around somebody that was as positive as he was, and, and he had a plan, and, and he intended that we were going to win and that we were going to win right away. My sophomore year, I think we had 8 scholarship players, and we had, several walk-ons. Billy Donovan was our graduate assistant. He was practicing with us a lot of times. So we didn't have, 2 or 3 guys standing over here that could come in and give us a break during practice, and we were working on, constantly working on parts of the press, the whole press. We were doing all these different drills, and I mean, it was 2 and 3 hours of just running, and I would weigh in at like 170, and I'd weigh out at 158, 160 pounds. I'd lose 10, 12 pounds during practice. But, Coach Pitino was an amazing coach. And, and I've said Rick Pitino was the exact right coach at the exact right time. And I don't think that there was anybody else that could have done what he done the way that he did it, as soon as he did it.
In Pitino's first year, the Cats pressed opponents the entire game, shot more threes than any other team in the country, and played a fun style of basketball that True Blue fans quickly embraced. In a season that started with low expectations, this Kentucky team not only learned to love the new style of play, they thrived in it.
He was the first guy to really take advantage of the three-point shot, and he used the press. And, understanding that a lot of times you may not make a lot of steals or you may not do a lot in the first half of the press, but you were wearing your opponents down. And he used to say that when people get tired, they become cowards. And so, guys that want the ball when they're fresh, all of a sudden don't want the ball when they're tired. He said, I've seen it over and over and over, and he said, I did it with Providence, and, and it works. I did it with the Knicks. It works, guys. Eventually those guys will hit the wall. You'll make your, 14-0 run, your 16-2 run, whatever, and, you'll win the game. But at that time, we had bought into what he was doing, because that year we went 14-14. I think before the season that a lot of the experts had predicted that we might win 5-6 games, So So it was, it was so much better than, people had imagined that year could be. And if you think back or, talk to people around that season, they'll tell you that might have been one of the, most fun seasons that they could remember in a long time.
Richie's junior year marked the last year of NCAA probation and postseason ineligibility for Kentucky, and added an immediate sense of importance to each regular season game.
Because that was what he would preach to us, every game is your tournament. We're not eligible, but we're going to play every game like it's if you lose, you're out kind of thing, So we took every game seriously, and our goal was to have the best record in the SEC and to win the SEC outright, in which we were able to do that, but we just weren't eligible to be called champions. What I remember real vividly is, that year they kind of treated us here as if, we had the best record in the SEC. We kind of won the SEC, so, they went all out. We had a parade downtown, but I remember they always had that asterisk beside us, not eligible for a tourney, so they'd have the standings and they would always have that asterisk by our names the whole year. And so, that year, the big headline on the Cats' paws at the front, after the season was over was Cats win SEC, kiss our asterisk.
Richie's senior year was highly anticipated by the fans as well as the players. Richie, along with Darren Feldhouse, John Pelfrey, and Sean Woods, were named team captains. Richie discussed the enthusiasm surrounding the start of the 91-92 season.
As a senior and, been here since Coach had shown up, we pretty much knew what to expect and, what to be ready for. And we had our guys that we knew was going to make, log most of the minutes was there. So, we had everybody back, and, we knew that was going to be, our first year that we were going to be eligible to make the NCAA tournament. So we started from day one, ready to prepare ourselves for that time.
The coal industry's had a big impact on my life. My grandfather was a coal miner, my father was a coal miner. Coal is the largest driving force in our local economy. That's why I'm a friend of coal.
Double Dogs is a great place to eat. In a single word, delicious.
The Wildcats finished the 91-92 regular season 26-6 and captured the SEC regular season crown as well. Richie earned a starting position in his senior year and averaged 10 points per game leading into postseason play. The Cats roared through the SEC tournament, crushing Alabama 80-54 in the finals, earning the Cats a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. Kentucky recorded early round victories over Old Dominion and Iowa State, then faced a John Calipari-coached Massachusetts team in the Sweet 16.
I can remember that game because one of the coaches came to me and, told me that they had seen, their chalkboard, and they had talked about how that, they were going to exploit me and yada, yada, yada. Yeah, so I don't remember how many points I had in most of those games, but I can say that, it was sweet to play them and beat them because they actually were on a pretty good roll at that time. And
Kentucky's 87-77 victory over UMass set up a regional final matchup against the number 1 seed, number 1 ranked Duke Blue Devils at the Spectrum in Philadelphia.
Well, they were really good, and I mean they had very few weaknesses. But we had been brainwashed to think that for a 1-game deal that we could beat anybody. I mean that was kind of our MO, is that we were going to do to them exactly what had gotten us to that point. We were going to try to wear them down and, beat them in the end. And the reason that game was so great was just the way the game was played. For the whole game, it was played at such a high level. There was great play after great play after great play, and there were so many different players making those plays. I think on that night, whoever had the ball last was going to win.
Richie Farmer wore the blue and white during one of the greatest college games of all time, with 2.1 seconds on the clock in overtime and Kentucky leading 103-102. I had to ask about the shot.
Yeah, I think that the coaches had discussed whether or not to put somebody on the ball, but at the end of the day, they had decided to not do that, and they did stress, don't foul, because we didn't want to put them on the line. And I remember I was guarding Thomas Hill at the front. You know, he wanted us to make sure that those guys, you know, if they caught the ball, that they caught it, you know, out in front of us. And as I was standing right on the goal when the shot come through the basket. And I can remember, you know, kind of going to the floor and, you know, with my head down, and I felt somebody grab me and, you know, kind of pick me up, and it was Coach K. And, you know, and he actually told me, he said, listen, you guys have nothing to hold your head down about. He said, you guys are not losers, you're winners, and you need to always remember that.
In his last game in a Kentucky uniform, Richie and the Cats fell 1 point short of knocking off the nation's #1 team and advancing to the Final Four. Richie shared his thoughts about the outcome of that fateful game, his memories of Kentucky's devoted fans, and the cherished honor of having his Kentucky Wildcat jersey retired.
At first, it was one of those things that, it was one of those games that just, you know, hurts and sticks in your craw for, you know, a lot of years. And then as you age and as you know, grow older and you look back and you reflect, you know, you start to realize, you know, what a special game that it was and just how special it was to be a part of something that, you know, all these many years later, they're still saying may have been the greatest college basketball game ever played. I mean, still to this day. You know, I think being a kid that was the size that I am, you know, 6-foot kid from Eastern Kentucky that, you know, talked with a twang, and, you know, they kind of watched me grow up and watch me play in the state tournament. And, you know, I think it's a little bit of all those things, but I've just always been so appreciative of the way that the people of the state have, you know, kind of embraced me, and they've stuck behind me and supported me in every endeavor I've ever been through. You know, I've told you that I dreamed of winning state tournament games and state championships, or you dream of, you know, having a great game or, you know, scoring a lot of points, but you know, you just don't dare dream that your jersey will ever be retired and be hanging in the rafters at Rupp Arena. Especially with, you know, the amount of talent that's played here, and you know, the greats that came before me, and you know, there's been a lot of great players that's been here after me, and there will always be. To be one of those people that's hanging in the rafters is a very special thing.
Richie Farmer scored 898 points during his career at Kentucky. He pumped in a career-high 28 points in a 91-70 win over Notre Dame in front of the home crowd at Rupp Arena on January 2nd, 1992. His 83.8 career free throw percentage ranks him in the top 10 on Kentucky's all-time list. Richie's numerous on-court achievements and his unwavering loyalty to Kentucky basketball during the program's darkest hours have endured this native son from Clay County to the Big Blue Nation forever. Richie Farmer's number 32 Wildcat jersey hangs in the rafters of Rupp Arena as a testament to his unforgettable contribution to the success of the University of Kentucky basketball program. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Until next time, when we hear more tales from the Rafters of Rupp.
From the Rafters of Rupp was brought to you by Bud's Gun Shop, Don Franklin's Auto Mall, Double Dogs, Friends of Coal, Hunt Brothers Pizza, Kentucky Farm Bureau, and by Rafferty's.